A lot of people have probably seen that you could get to 100k a month, and that isn't just a huge scam.
People who are really, really good at stuff can't explain why they're good at stuff. How difficult is it to turn away short-term revenue for long-term sustainability, vision, and profits?
To where I wanted to be in e-com, because it's so competitive. It would have been so difficult to get clients because I would have been starting from absolute zero.
I think on that, and I remember a client before with us, they were spending 15, 20k a month on Meta.
We're all grappling with something. Each and every entrepreneur, business owner, and leader experiences growing pains, no matter where they are on their business journey. On Grappling Growth, we discuss the challenges we consistently face in striving for more, sharing strategies, ideas, and thoughts on how to grapple with growth. We're building a platform where you can join us sharing your challenges and successes alike, whilst growing. So, you coming along?
Welcome back to Grappling Growth. We are on episode 14, hosted by myself, Krasniqi, and my co-host, Joe Testouri. Now, in today's episode, we have another very special guest, and I'm very pleased to introduce Ciaran Finn from Bluefin Media. Ciaran, first of all, I think a lot of people might have heard of you already that are in our space, but why don't you give us just a tiny breakdown, a bit of background about you, just for context sake.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, guys. So, as you said, my name is Ciaran Finn. Super excited to be on the pod with you. I run Bluefin Media. We are a e-commerce growth agency, essentially. So we take e-commerce brands and we scale them with paid ads, content, and growth consulting. We focus on those three right now. Potential to look at adding in more things later, but those are the core focuses at the moment. For me personally, this agency started roughly 3 years ago. Now live in Dubai. I moved there at the start of this year. And yeah, I'd say that gives a pretty good overview for the guys watching.
Mm-hmm. So, Ciaran, you and I, we've gone back and forth on, I don't know, Facebook Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp for probably about the last year and a half. And what I quite like about the agency space is that people big each other up. And I don't think competition is as fierce as maybe clients might expect. And there is this culture of knowledge sharing. And I think fundamentally for every agency that's out there, there's probably 100 brands. So kind of casting your mind back a little bit, you look at the birth of the agency. Was there a moment, and when was the moment, where you were growing the agency and you thought, you know what, I can actually make this a real viable business?
So, yeah, it's an interesting question, right? Because when I first started, I think I went in a bit differently to most people in that I went in completely green. Like I didn't know anything about the space. A lot of people I see, they do spend a bit of time kind of on the fringes and they're looking at stuff, they're watching a lot of videos, and it takes them a while to kind of take the leap and go for it. As soon as I even realized this was a thing, as soon as I came across it, I just went all in on it and didn't stop. So pretty quickly, as it was growing, I still had zero reference points as to what was actually realistic and to what was actually possible, right? For example, a lot of people have probably seen that you could get to 100k a month, and that isn't just a huge scam. Whereas I was there doing it, and I'd see people like Iman Gadzi and stuff talk about being 100k a month. He was probably one of the few people that I'd see talking about that. And it just seemed so unrealistic. Like I was like it just didn't seem possible. I was like, that can't even be real. And that would have been like 3 years ago now, yeah. And it wouldn't have been really until I first started to get a bit of growth, really. First started to hire the first team member, and I could see that went well and that went smooth, and he didn't fuck up all the accounts, basically, because I'd picked the right guy and trained him well, and left myself with enough time to make sure to manage him properly. And that's when I could see, okay, like I could see how it was scalable. I could see how that was going to work. And then from there, yeah, that was when I was like, cool, this is going to work. But I always had for a very long time a feeling like, oh, this isn't stable, or like, which was good because it gave me a lot of push to continue going and to continue working. And I still have that now, to be fair. I know things are very stable, but I don't like sitting and saying, yeah, cool, like this is fine, I'm just going to not work or whatever, right? I'm always wanting to improve it. I'm always wanting to be like, cool, okay. A lot of that is positively driven, but there is definitely a negative drive in there of like, oh, is it quite good enough? Could it be better? Yeah, okay, well, the work's not finished then, right?
It's kind of that fear and hope conundrum that a lot of entrepreneurs start because they're in a fearful mindset, and there's kind of a villain arc where I have to do this because my parents said this, or a teacher said I couldn't do this, or I'm in a job and my boss didn't let me do whatever. Did you have a moment? Because I feel a lot of entrepreneurs, they have a moment where, I don't want to use the word made it, but they sit down and think, geez, I've actually done something pretty impressive here. You can look back at the sunset and think, that is beautiful. Did you have that?
Yes. So I would say, I wouldn't say I felt like I've made it, but when I had a key moment when I realized that I'd built something very special. And that was when, it was actually the end of last year. So at that point I had a team leader in place and I had 2 media buyers on board, and it was running fairly smooth like that. Had a lot of chats with the team leader around, cool, what do we want to do to scale again? Should we bring on another media buyer who could handle the service delivery? And we ended up saying, let's bring on 2. So we brought on 2 at the same time, and we also hired a creative strategist. So at that point, our profit shrank massively because I was also not onboarding clients, because I was like, we're not onboarding any until these guys are fully trained up and ready. And I was also building out a bit of our acquisition systems for the agency as well. So I was like, we're not onboarding any clients until this is all ready. So we were below on clients. We just hired 3 new team members, so our profit had shrank massively. And then we said, cool, let's go. And the team leader basically said to me, he's now my COO, Bruno, shout out to him, legend. He was like, bro, we've got all the systems in place. We were looking at it. We both said, we've got all the systems in place. We'd build it all out from onboarding clients. We knew that it was completely smooth. Everything was systemized. We'd come on board. We'd have ads live within a week of them coming on board. And it all worked perfectly. So we said, cool, let's just go for it. Let's just bring in as many as we can. He was going to focus on onboarding. I was going to focus on bringing a client. We ended up bringing on 13 in 1 month, and then hit capacity shortly after that. And it all went super smooth. And before that, we'd had in our head that the max we could have brought on previously would have been 1 a week, maybe a bit more, right? Is when we looked at the system and said, why should it be 1 a week? Like, the systems are smooth, everything works. We don't have any problems. We can do more than this, and we did that. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, like what I've built handled that completely smoothly with no problems, better than I would have handled it if I was doing the onboarding, right? And it's when the team can perform better than you can. And when everything runs smoothly with those systems, that's when you can see, wow, okay, what I've built here is something special. Like it works. And then that allows you to see, wow, okay, we can go so much further, and results can be better than just me, right? Because we can have better people on the team, better systems.
Yeah, it just works on the factor of leverage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I think a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck because they don't want to hire people. Or might be they don't want to. Some might not want to because of ego, but they struggle because they're always the best person on the team. Is the founder. And that's very common for a small business. But if you really want to grow, it's the only way to grow. You need people better than you. And you need to be comfortable investing in the team to become better than you would think. Or hiring people who are better than you. Because it's the only way you can do it. You can't have everything in your head. And I think part of that is probably ego. Another part of it depends on the personality. Like for me, I love learning new things. I love learning new things. So if we need to figure something out as a business, I want to figure it out. But sometimes I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense for me to figure it out because I'm focusing on other things right now. I'm happy to let a team member learn this skill and figure this out, right?
I also think, contrary to that, there's an element with people, and that there's a lot of research into this. But if we look at the best footballers over the last 50 years, how many of them have gone on to become the best managers? Zinedine Zidane's probably arguably the best pound-for-pound player for manager. And when you look into this psychologically, is the people who are really, really good at stuff can't explain why they're good at stuff. So when they go to teach someone, if you're Lionel Messi, well, 99 people out of 100 can't learn the technicalities of Messi. It doesn't matter how well they're trained, they can't get to that echelon of level. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't know how to teach. And there's a difference between being a leader and an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I completely agree.
It's interesting. I think one thing that I picked up on, Ciaran, is how smooth you said a lot of that transition period went for you. But what was I mean, there must have been some challenges you had to overcome. What was like the hardest bit about getting through that, or was there any hiccups that you had to like sort out, or things that you didn't expect popping up when you were like going through that process?
Not massively. The biggest problems that we had were not on service delivery and onboarding. It was with the client, which isn't the client's fault. That was my fault on sales. That was a problem with sales.
Okay.
So after that, what we realized is we needed to be a lot tighter with our sales process. So we were already pretty tight in terms of who we brought on. We already vetted clients pretty carefully, but we noticed there was some things that would slip through that where we know a client wouldn't be suitable for what we do, because we can't help everyone, right? We don't have a magic wand. We help a very specific type of client, and we help them very, very well. But if they're not really suited, then we can't help them that much, right? So there was the odd things where we'd see and go, okay, it's not quite suitable because of this. And then after that, we then had a huge refresh on our sales side to tighten up our audit process, and our audit process is super, super tight, so that we make sure we only bring on the right client. And now we turn away more clients than we actually take on because of that. Clients that book in a call with us or apply to work with us, because it's so important that we only work with the right brand, right? It's super, super important.
So a question to that, as a business owner and entrepreneur, how difficult is it to turn away short-term revenue for long-term sustainability, vision, and profits?
For me, that's gotten easier with time. So, and I think that probably makes sense for most people, in that when you start the business, you're so desperate because you have nothing, right? You have nothing. You pretty much have to work for whatever you'll get paid, with who will pay you. That is just how you have to start, right? Within reason, right? You're not going to work with someone who you know you can't help, because you need to have morals, obviously. But like, if someone comes on and they go, I want you to do all of this for a tiny amount of money, you just have to go, okay, because you don't have a choice, right? There's no other options. But then pretty quickly, when you start getting good at what you do and you start getting clients, it doesn't become a huge problem. Then that's when you need to have that knowledge of when it makes sense to do that or not. I think some people do get lost in that, and they do chase the short-term money. But it just creates so many headaches. Like if you do that, you end up just like we looks at it. So like, if we bring a client on, and you can never be 100% with this, right? It will happen where it will still slip through, where we'll bring a client on and they won't be 100% suitable for what we do. We thought they were, we bring them on, and we then find out some information that we didn't get from the audit. And we realize, this isn't actually going to work, right? When that happens, we just refund the client. We don't care. We just go, have your money back. We don't care. Even if we worked on it for 3 weeks or a month, right? We don't care about losing our time that we put in and the money that the business has spent on the team and the resources, because like, it happens so rarely, and we really look at lifetime value. So if a client is going to stay with us a year, 2 years, or whatever it might be, refunding a month is nothing. Like, I don't care about that, right? I'd much rather keep goodwill than take money from a client where it's not that suitable, but that should be on us. Like, we should go, no, like we brought you on. It's on us. It's not on them, right? A lot of agencies leave it to the client to go, well, you paid us, so like, it's not up to us if you're in the right position for it to work or not, right? I think that's just a completely wrong way to go about it. So to answer your question, definitely gets easier with time, and I think that you will get capped if you do that. You need to be able to do it. Like, we've done it. We did it right now, so we're not onboarding now again. Last month we turned away 7 new clients, which would have been multiple 5 figures of monthly recurring revenue, and that was because we're focusing so hard on our internal service right now. So we're focusing really hard on getting our creatives and our systems and our processes around creatives super, super sharp. So they're already very good, but we want them to be better. And the executive team were focusing on that so much, and I could see my exec team focusing on that I was like, I don't want to stop that. Like, the value that I could see, and that's like instant gratification versus long term, right? The value I could see that them working on that would have in the future, I was like, I don't want to take them away from that for the short term gratification of increasing profit a bit right now, right? We can do that later. That's no problem.
There's 2 things I picked up there. Is you take extreme ownership from everything that happens. So yeah, this client might be throwing money at you and they really want to work with you, but it's the job of your team to audit the brand well enough so you bring them on and they're suitable. So if they churn, which in reality, to an extent, there's elements of their fault, but you've said, actually, we're going to assume extreme ownership here and say, no, this was our fault. And then secondly, it's a case of that long-term view and not thinking about and not chasing the short-term profit. And I remember the first client that I worked with. So this was, I was doing web design services, and I think my first 3 or 4 clients, they were all for free, and it was my mum's website, my dad's website, a friend of a friend, and I was charging stupid money. It was like £500 for a website, their whole branding, logo. But I didn't care, because for me, I always thought I'd rather have 5 or 6 case studies that I can go back to, and when I'm speaking to someone on the call, say, hey, I did this with so-and-so, and they're similar to you, and then you've got their success story, and then you use that to sell. And I think a lot of people I'm seeing, and I get pitched a lot for appointment setters, creatives, all of that, people just go from 0 to 100 when going from 0 to 1 is way harder than 1 to 10.
Yeah. I completely agree. And like the thing is, the most important thing is actually just learning how to have a client and manage a client. Like when you're that early on, you don't have a clue about any of it. And so even if it's for free, it doesn't matter, because even if it's not, and I was saying this the other day, even if it's like, if you have a niche in mind that you want to go after, but early on you don't have that much experience and a potential client comes in a completely different niche, take it, because the same principles apply to handling a client in any niche. You have to sign the client, or get them to book a call with you, have a call with them, get them to pay you, onboard them properly, get access to everything you need, build out a marketing plan, whatever the service is and whatever the niche is, this is all the same. And you have to manage them, you have to report to them, you have to learn how to communicate with them. That all stays the exact same. Like, I've never, ever worked with a dentist on anything. But if a dentist came to me and was like, hey, I want to get more leads for my dentist practice, I'd know for a fact I'd be able to do it. I just need to learn a little bit more about the specifics of the industry and then how it would work, but I know I'd be able to do it. And I know that he would have a great time and he would feel like he's with a very professional service provider because I've worked with that many clients before, right? And that all stays the exact same.
Yeah, that's it. Build your blueprint.
It's interesting that you say that, Ciaran, because I think the thing about niching, I think early on in the career, I would agree. I'd say later down the line, for more established agencies, I think straying from the niche is can be quite dangerous, especially when you have like set processes. Maybe I say this for SEO, because most niches are different when I approach it. Like if we go iGaming versus like dentistry or something as simple as, like, I don't know, celebrity gossip, like those are handled very differently by Google, so we have to have different approaches. But would you say early on in someone's journey that experimenting with different niches was worthwhile, and then later on picking a niche? Or how would you recommend someone approach the whole like niche versus generalist approach?
Yeah, so first few clients, I don't think it matters. You just need to get them on. Like, it doesn't matter who it is, it doesn't matter how much they pay you. You just need, because when you're at 0, you are so different to when you've handled like 3 clients, regardless of what niche they're in, what service you're giving. You just need to have people paying you money and you giving them a service, like online. Like that is it. First few, doesn't matter what. Then I'd say pick a niche, right? And early on, before that, if you can't get any clients, then yeah, you will have to pick a niche to get someone, right? But usually you'll be able to get something. Like you said, Joe, you worked on your parents' websites and stuff. Like, you can do that for free. A lot of people just don't want to work for free. I think that's it. Or they overthink the whole niche thing, so they never sign a single client, right? And then when they do pick a niche, like so for example, I spoke about this in a previous podcast. You need to find something where you have a competitive advantage, right? A lot of people will pick a niche at random. Like, I picked chiropractors and physio clinics when I first started, just at random, right? When I was doing that, I was getting absolutely nowhere, because everyone else I was competing with had all the case studies, had all the results and everything, right? I also don't think it's an amazing niche unless you go really high volume, because the average retainer is going to be quite lower, right? But you can fix that with volume. But I was like, screw this, I'm going against this. I then looked at how I could have a competitive advantage, right? And for me, it was languages, because I was studying triple language at university. I spent a lot of time in South America, I lived over there. And so I picked languages. So the first client I signed was a language course seller. So they sold language courses. Second client I signed was an 8-figure language learning app. And that client was where I really, really learned ads. They stayed with me a year, and I scaled them from spending zero, they weren't spending anything, and then went spending 50 grand a month on Facebook profitably for app install campaigns. And that was when I really learned ads. And then after that, I went into ecom. Now we only work with ecom, and I run a 7-figure ecom agency. But my first clients went ecom. And that's what I mean is like you can learn all the fundamentals. Like if I'd gone straight into ecom at zero, I think it would have taken me so much longer to get to where I wanted to be in ecom, because it's so competitive. It would have been so difficult to get clients because I would have been starting from absolute zero. Where I was at zero would have been so far away from where I needed to be. Whereas me getting a leg up with those two clients that weren't really what the niche I wanted to focus on took me from 0 to 1, like you said, Joe, and then to go from 1 to 10 wasn't actually that difficult. But to go from 0 to 1, if I was trying to do that in the main niche I wanted, would have been very, very difficult, I think. And so yeah, that's what I'd say for that.
Interesting, yeah. I think it's a great way to have approached it originally, because I think Joe, you might have done something similar with certain niches, and I definitely did it with my agency, where I was kind of like, I'm working with all sorts of businesses, and actually it's hard to implement one process to the next. But then once you've niched down, and I just do e-com now as well, and you like really nail that niche, that's where that competitive advantage comes in, as you were saying, Ciaran. Like those chiropractor agencies, they were there because they knew, like a chiropractor's like, these guys know chiropractors, I'm going to go with these guys. That makes sense, right?
Exactly.
So that kind of thing is, I think, makes a difference, right?
That's exactly it. And then I think to touch on the point you said about branching out later, I think, as you start to grow, I definitely think niching down makes so much sense. Eventually, you will hit a point, which we are nowhere near, but eventually you'll hit a point where it could start to make sense to branch out, right? I think the first area to branch out would be other services that still fit in with your niche. That makes a lot of sense. But eventually, like if you look at very, very, very large agencies, eventually like the total addressable market does become a thing. And you will want to start going outside it, but in something like e-commerce, it's so large. Yeah. But then again, if you really want to get picky, like you could argue that there are so many niches. Like, is e-commerce a niche? Really, is it? Like you've got CPG, you've got fashion brands. True. They're totally different. Like fashion brands, some of our fashion brand clients have 2,000, 3,000. One of them has 20,000 SKUs, 20,000 products on the website. Some of our CPG brands have one. Right, like the way you market those two brands is completely different. The fashion brand doesn't really solve a key problem, so you can't go super deep on like the marketing fundamentals and direct response of like problem solution. Whereas this one supplement does. It solves a very clear problem. We can go very, very deep on that, right? So the creative is very important here. For the fashion brand, it'd be the media buying structure, campaign structures that are very important because we've got 20,000 products that we're advertising, right? So again, like you could argue that there's lots of niches within it as well.
Yeah, no, you're bang on actually, and I'd love to hear like your thoughts on this, Joe, too, because ecom is you're right. If I just did fashion ecom, or if I did, I don't know, because a lot of my clients are actually in fashion, but then I've got other clients that are in that are more B2B, but in B2B ecom is actually kind of different to. Like wholesale e-commerce is very different to like B2C straight, selling it is a supplement or a vitamin or a piece of clothing. Exactly. That all plays a part.
Yeah, spot on. There's a client we've been working with for the last 2.5 years now, and their main product is a solution-based product. And what we found that was driving 80% of their revenue. And when people brought that problem, they were when we did our cohort analysis, they were way more likely to buy all the other products within the store. Whereas if we went for a product that was an accessory or something that wasn't a need or a solution, nothing else would happen after that. And even speaking to that client, we just said, we're going to focus 80% of our budget on this because it makes sense. And for them, they were like, well, we like these other products. Fundamentally, it's about what's going to drive the most lifetime value into your business. And it doesn't, at times it feels like you're schooling clients and you're like, hey, you don't want to be patronizing or condescending. You're saying, hey, this is what's going to make you the most money. Maybe you don't like the look of this creative. The UGC creative you don't think is great, but the professional stuff is great. Fundamentally though, the UGC stuff is what's going to stop the scroll, is what people are going to resonate with for these reasons. On that point, Ciaran,
yeah,
and kind of to the nature of our name, Grappling Growth, what's been one of the biggest challenges you've experienced with clients over the last 3 years?
Yeah, so I would say the point that you've touched on there, around following the client strategy versus our strategy, right? And now it's fine. Early on, it wasn't ever a problem with me, but as soon as I brought on the first team members, I would notice it would start to be a problem where the client would trust me more, so they might not trust the team member, and it would take me to come in and say, no, we need to listen to his strategy, and then they would, right? And now it's not a problem. So really kind of joining with that frame and asserting that. And really, I think where that comes from is, like we were touching on before, now I'm okay. Like I said, last month, we've turned away clients, and now our profit is less than it was. And I'm still happy to say, no, I don't need that profit because there's more things we can focus on, right? And I think having that abundance of knowing, like, cool, clients want to work with us. We don't need to work with every single client out there, gives you a lot more frame when you can then come with your strategy to a client, right? And you have to do this. You have to do this because a client is paying you as an agency to know more than them, essentially, right? Or to do something that they can't do in some cases, right? If that wasn't the case, then it's running ads. We say this all the time. Running ads is not hard. You can hire a freelancer on Upwork to run ads. It's very simple. What's very hard is the performance marketing strategy behind all the ads, right? That's what's very difficult. And if you're listening to a client and you're listening and the client is dictating all of the strategy, then the problem is that they're basically paying you a glorified freelancer rate, right? Because an agency is always going to be more than a freelancer because there's more value in a freelancer, right? But the client isn't getting that value. So you always have to, like you said, you're never going to be rude about it, but you have to stick with your plan and you have to stick with what you think is right. Of course, clients, rightly so, because they're going to spot things that we might miss. And we go, okay, it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, we're like, okay, yeah, this is a really great point. All we want is what's best for the client and the best results for the client. So sometimes that means not doing the strategy that they want to do necessarily, right? What's important though is having the larger picture in mind. So a lot of brands would take a lot of agencies would take what I've just said and go, okay, we're going to run only ugly direct response ads, and every time a client says, I don't think this ad fits my branding, I'm going to say, no, go away, we're doing my strategy. That's not what I'm saying, right? Because branding is incredibly important. It's very important, very, very important for the longevity. If you just want to generate some extra cash over the next 3 months, then screw the brand and just do crazy discount ads and emails, right? But brand is incredibly important because if you do that strategy, you will burn your brand, right? And so it is balancing those, but a lot of time it's understanding where you feel the balance is right, and then trusting yourself and your knowledge and the results you've gotten in your team and knowing who you are in terms of the expertise you have, in being able to say, no, this is the right path. We need to try this and test this, right? Otherwise, it's not going to work. And then when it doesn't work, if you don't own it, if it doesn't work, then you're left in like a blame game, right? Whereas if it's all your strategy and it doesn't work, then you go, yeah, it didn't work, whatever. Whereas if the client leads a strategy and you can't speak up and you don't let your strategy come out because you let the client dictate what has to happen rather than what you know is the right strategy, when it doesn't work, then you're left blaming the client. But that's never a situation you want to be in, because then the client would be like, well, why didn't you make me do it, right? Rightly so. So yeah, it's very, very, very important to do that. But I think it comes from abundance and accepting that, because it might happen, right? A client might say, no, I completely disagree with you, I'm leaving. But if that's the case, it's like, okay, fine, like that's no problem, because it's not going to work anyway, right? And there's no point. Like, the other thing as well is if a client isn't getting value, then I don't want them to be our client, even if they're paying us a boatload of money. If they're not getting value from it, I don't want it, right? And it's happened before where I've told them, I've been like, guys, like, we're completely following your strategy. I genuinely don't think you need us, because you could hire a freelancer, lead them with the strategy you're doing, and it'd cost a fraction of the cost, right? And in those cases, like, that's fine. Like, not every brand is perfect for us, and we're not perfect for every brand. We only want to work with brands that are in a perfect position where we can help them, right? So yeah, it's very important to focus on that.
Powerful. Erald, you've got a question, haven't you?
Yeah, so there's not just us that's in the agency space looking for answers. We have all our fellow entrepreneurs, and we have a lot of agency owners that we connect with, and entrepreneurs that ask us questions. And this one's coming in about client expectations, actually, so it's kind of poignant. But someone's said, I've been in the game a while now, and I want to start a discussion about something that's been a common challenge for me. I've had a few clients that came in with high expectations, thinking that a well-managed campaign will translate into skyrocketing numbers. However, whilst we all know the power of digital marketing, it's pretty crucial to set realistic expectations. How do you guys set expectations with clients to make sure that they don't churn after a month, or that they are unhappy with results if you aren't able to achieve the initial numbers? Now, I don't know if this has been a thing for you, Ciaran. I'll give a brief story before I pass it over to you about setting expectations. We had a client that came in once, and they had a massive budget. They were like, we have 20,000 a month to spend on SEO, and we want to rank for these terms. And they were very specific. They were like, we want this and this and this. Tell me right now if we can get there. And I looked at it and I was like, the money is so good. And I was like, but it's literally going to be impossible to rank for this term. Like, and I told them, I was like, it's impossible. Like, the term that they picked was not even like, it was like a one-word term that didn't even relate to their brand properly. It was just like, it was like, if anyone looked at it, even if they weren't in SEO, they'd be like, it's a bit weird to like have that target. And they were like, well, if we can't hit that, then we don't want to work with you. And I said, that's completely fine. I think that headache is best off for someone else than it is for me. But, and I want to pass it around, because I think the people listening would probably benefit from all our perspectives. I want, if you don't mind, Ciaran, Joe to go next, and then I'd love to hear your perspectives to give you a bit of time to think about it.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
I'm more sparked on what you said, because I'm trying to work out your client. I think I know who they are. Then the context of the question. But I think what you said there is you're throwing cash onto the fire, and you're wondering why the fire isn't burning for long enough. And that's not a reference to Pablo Escobar. Ciaran, I know you spent some time in Colombia, but I think on that, and I remember a client before with us, they were spending 15, 20k a month on Meta, and one day overnight they pumped the spend up to 30, 32k. And I mean, Ciaran, you know what's going to happen. The results are going to tank. So they tanked, and then they got really pissy with us. And lo and behold, I think 3-4 months later, they churned. But I think going back to that, if you don't set your flag in the ground at the first instance, then you're going to lose. Because fundamentally, it's a relationship, and every relationship should be balanced. It goes 60-40, 60-40, 50-50 generally. But if you're 90% one way, 10% the other way, then it's not a fair relationship. And anyone who I partner with, who I work with, the number one thing I focus on is fairness. And if something isn't fair, then it's not going to be sustainable. And you get people who come to you who want to bite your arm off and break your leg to get the best deal possible. And that's not going to build longevity. And I think setting your precedents from the start is the best policy. And what I try to do in everything is lead with integrity. I had a brand reach out to me last week who we had a conversation back in July. We didn't work together in July, but they said, you're too expensive, but you've provided so much value for us that you're the first person that we'll come to. And just part of my follow-up process with any leads is I call leads once a month just to check in generally. I do a bit of research, check in with how they're doing. So I've got some substance to go in with. And I think anyone who's running any service-based business, just doing 10, 20 minutes, you don't even need to do 20 minutes worth of research and due diligence. But before you coming onto this pod, Ciaran, I just put a few of your podcasts on that you've been on in the background while I'm working. It's not very hard. You're listening to stuff as it is. And I think there's small tweaks that you can do to set yourself up. Anyways, we had this conversation last week. They didn't sign again. It was a money issue, but they said our aspiration is to get to X level and then we can afford you. But as well, being honest and saying, hey, actually, the solution isn't right for you right now, or you're not at that level, or actually scrap this. I think people respect courage and honesty, and someone actually who can turn around and say, I know my worth, and not doing it in an arrogant or patronizing way. Because I think there's a lot of people in the agency space who gloat about hitting certain levels, and you see these threads on X, Twitter, where they say, I got my agency to 70k per month and I did this. And it's like, well, hitting it once, fair play, but how consistent are you? And just maintaining humility. And Ciaran, you train Muay Thai. I've done Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu. The foundation of any strong martial arts is humility and just being able to learn. So I'll throw it over to you now.
Yeah. Martial arts will very quickly humble you. It will very quickly humble you. Unless you're blessed with being a natural Mike Tyson, which unfortunately I'm not. I am very average. But yeah, so Erald, remind me of the specifics of the question again, so I can answer it clearly.
Of course,
So
all about managing expectations. How do you manage expectations to avoid clients churning, being unhappy with results, and or just finding like really bad fits when it comes to relationships and partnerships?
So managing expectations is super important. I honestly think it's the first thing that everyone does wrong in the client relationship. And if you do it wrong, I think the relationship has a very short lifespan. We very, very strongly stay on the approach of under promise and over deliver. I would so much rather tell a client that if they have these large goals, I'd so much rather tell them, look, I don't think that's realistic. I think we're more likely going to hit this. Could this work for you? And then they go, okay, yeah. And then we massively go way above that. Then them come in with some crazy goals, us say, yeah, we can definitely do it. And then we hit slightly below that, which is still very profitable for them, but then they're unhappy and they still leave, right? And it's very, very, very important to do that. And again, I think it comes from the abundance side. Like, we know that I've always felt and known that you have to do the right thing, right? You have to do the right thing, and the clients will be there. And if you do the right thing long enough, then your business will work. If you do the wrong thing long enough, then it might work short term, but in the long term, it's going to come back wrong, right? Because it happens all the time. We have brands come on and come to us, and when we audit their account, we can see that their problem isn't ads. It's not what we sold. It's something else. It happens a lot. Like, more than half of the audits that we do when we physically audit the ad account, we look inside and go, this is really your problem. And that is like a certain, it's like Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. This brand's on the call. They want to work with us. I know for a fact I could get them to pay me thousands of dollars a month if I wanted to. So every time that happens, I'm saying no to that. And I know that I could do what most agencies do, which is sign them on and say, okay, here's your 3-month growth plan. At the end of the 3 months, we haven't hit it. And I say, oh, it's just a few more months of testing, a few more months out of them. And then that's my 5-month average LTV, which most agencies have. And that is what most agencies do. They just sign anyone who comes, regardless of if it's going to work or not. 3-month start plan, string them along for 2 more months saying testing, and that's it. That's what most agencies do. And every time we say no to that, I'm turning away cash. But it's because I know that doing the right thing in the long term is what's going to matter. And any agencies or service providers that continue doing the wrong thing, eventually bad reviews, bad karma in the marketplace, which is very real. Like, you have no concept of how powerful the ripple effect is of what you do. You don't know because you don't see any of it. You're blind to it. You don't know what people say behind closed doors. You don't know what's said on forums and online and in group chats. You don't know that. But stuff spreads, and it spreads a lot, right? And that goes good and bad. And it's the same way, like, kind of going off on a tangent here, but that same concept is how people like Sam Ovens, Andrew Tate, Ty Lopez all got famous, because it's just like impressions. And like now, people like, because they were spending, well, Andrew Tate no, but he got impressions organically. But Ty Lopez was spending millions a month on YouTube ads, right, for his courses. And then that's how everyone got to see him. And just from those impressions, from seeing him all the time, then later, if someone wants to buy his course, it's like, oh, I remember seeing that guy online. Like, yeah, okay, I'm going to buy it. Or anything now he does, right? And that's the same thing with what you do. You are constantly putting, whatever you do, you're putting out ripples. And if you're putting out bad ripples, and in the future, brands going to be like, oh, no, I feel like I remember reading something bad about them online a year ago. No, I'm not going to go with that. Or, oh yeah, I remember seeing a video by them like a year ago, and he was talking about whatever, being integral or whatever. Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I like that. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, I remember seeing that Joe guy talking about the integrity that he goes for. Yeah. Let's go for it, right? Like you have no idea how much those ripples are. And so making sure to do the right thing is hard because you pretty much have to turn away revenue because you know that especially if a brand wants to work with you, which happens, right? But you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to do that. As well, just to live with yourself, like from a moral point of view, right? If you know it's not right for them, then like being able to sleep well at night is worth more than any money that, that you could ever give me, right? It is.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was gonna say, like, I think the point that Ciaran made there as well about like the LTV of a client, and like a 5K client for 1 month is worth less than a 3-month client. A 5K client for 1 month is worse than a 2K client for 3 months.
Yeah.
And that's nothing to do with pricing. You know, it could be that you have a 5K client for 3 months instead. But if you don't deliver that value and you're unrealistic with the expectations, if you tell a client, listen, we're going to make you $1 million in month 1, easy, just give us 300K, 3x ROAS, no problems, and you don't deliver, like, why would they stick around? And why would anyone ever trust you again?
Yes, exactly. And I understand why it's hard for people to do that. But again, it comes back to the abundance side, because I know that if a brand hops on a call, that if you just sell them the dream, they will go with it. Like they will. Like if you just tell people what they want to hear, they will go with it. But you can't do that, because then I think a lot of agencies do that. They just tell them what they want to hear, and then they just shoot themselves in the foot because they can't deliver on it. No one could deliver on it, right? And sometimes you have to have a hard conversation, and you have to say, look, okay, like this goal isn't realistic because of this. Like we've audited the accounts, here are the numbers. This is what we can do. Like it's cold data. Like there's nothing, like, to get this result, we need to get something crazy out of the box, which has never happened, right? But as soon as you bring that problem to them, then you can start discussing solutions. It's like, okay, if we didn't have this, like, could we accept a slightly higher cost per acquisition if our customer lifetime value is a little bit better? Yeah. Okay. So why don't we take a look at the lifetime value? Take a look. Okay, we think we can improve this with email. So maybe if we can improve this, then we don't need to get our ROAS as high with the ads, and then they could start to work. And then the client's like, okay, cool. And then you're solving the problem of the real problem with the client instead of just being a yes man, right? And then if you solve a problem like that for a client, then that's when a client will stay with you forever, because they see, okay, this person isn't a yes man. They actually care about me and my business. They're actually invested in solving a problem. And that only comes from having the hard conversations and really telling the truth, right? Because I think that's what a lot of people don't do.
Like Jordan Peterson says, tell the truth. I think on the point you made there, the analogy that I think of it, short-termism is like putting a plaster on a bath that has a hole which is filled with water and there's a pipe that's burst, instead of going to where the pipe is burst and then fixing it there. And I think maybe it comes from age, wisdom, maturity, but I've got a client who I've been working with, coaching for 4.5 years now. Intelligent lady, Oxford graduate. And she gave me a really strong piece of advice before. She said, your inner peace is worth more than anything else. And she said, I've only learned that lesson the older I've got. And I look at myself when I first started. So I started in 2017.
Yeah.
Fucking idiot. I mean, you just look at yourself from when you were a kid. And even the videos that I was putting out, or the weak propaganda that I was spewing, not that I was saying anything derogatory or wrong, but you look at that and that's great, and you need that growth. And I even see younger people even getting messages from them saying, hey, I want to do this. And I tell most young people, the whole goal within the agency space is they want to hit 10K and they want to do it in 90 days. And I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, you're not going to do that. You're probably going to not make money for 5 months, but that's where grit comes from, and having that determination to keep on learning something past where most people are willing to fail and not go through. And that's the resolve and testament of anyone, not even an entrepreneur, but someone who might be working a job or in a sport or in a discipline.
Yeah.
And again, that just comes down to your core beliefs and integrity. So those are my closing thoughts on the pod.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. And I think that, like, just to touch on something there that you said, a lot of people just have the money in their mind, right? And the problem with that is, one, like you said, they're probably not going to stick with it long enough to see success. Probably, right? The other problem, which is I think a bigger problem, is when you actually get there, you will just lose all motivation. Because, like, if very quickly you can reach a point where you can change your life and you can live, like, unless you have a crazy lifestyle goal, which I don't really, you can very quickly reach a point, if you don't want to be buying Lambos and everything every week, you can very quickly reach a point where you can do whatever you want to do, right? You can buy a nice house, you can get a nice car, you can travel, you can do whatever, right? And if that is your only goal, then you would lose all motivation. And staying there will be very difficult because you'll be trying to enjoy the lifestyle, and you just lose it all, right? It's happened to me when my focus has shifted away. And so it's about it's funny. I was watching a Sam Ovens video, right? It's a mastermind from Sam Ovens. If you don't know, Sam Ovens basically created consulting as online consulting as a thing.
Now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he's founded a school as well. And in the video, it's a mastermind video. Everyone's doing like 300K a month plus. Everyone would have paid like 30 grand to be there. And the entire thing, they don't talk about one single strategy. Every single question is about mindset. And he makes the joke where it's like, it's funny because when you're a beginner, the number one thing is mindset, because people can't even get out of bed at the right time and set and make the bed and have a shower and sit and work on it. It's mindset. And then it's all strategy, and then it's all the how to build funnels and how to do all this and business. And then it just goes back to mindset again. Because the motivation is the most important thing. Like, as soon as you're making enough money, most people are like, well, now what? Right? And if that is your goal, then it is like, now what? Because it's very hard, where you need to be able to focus on understanding yourself, which is a process that never ends. And it's a process that a lot of people look like they've got it figured out, but no one really does, right? Everyone's very confused. But you need to be able to understand yourself, understand why you're doing things and what motivates you, so you can understand how to basically keep motivated, right? Instead of trying to do things for the wrong reason. And then that's when you can keep going, and then that's when you can really find what works. If you can find a way to enjoy the process, then you'll be able to go forever. Whereas if you just for goals, as soon as you hit those goals, it will be like all motivation will disappear. It's a very important thing.
Mm-hmm. Ciaran, thank you. Just to close off, where can everyone find you? Where's the best place to connect with you?
Oh, good question. So, when's this pod being released? Soon.
In the new year.
In the new year? All right. By that point, I might actually have some videos on YouTube. We shall see. But if not, get on the YouTube early. Just look me up on YouTube, because I'll be posting a lot on there in the new year. Instagram, I'm somewhat active on. It's more lifestyle stuff, which is like 5-10% of what I do. 90% of what I do is sat in four walls working on a laptop. So Instagram more for lifestyle, YouTube for value bombs, which will be coming soon. Twitter as well, probably for value stuff as well. I'll be on there as well. So those three. Yeah.
And what's your handle?
Right now, it's at Ciaran Finn _. You can stick it in the. If this is on YouTube, you can stick it in the description as well.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, guys, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. It was good to finally meet as well. We've been chatting. We've been trying to organise meeting online, hopping on a call for so long, and we keep just both our schedules are just crazy, right?
We have. That's it. Erald, do you want to sign us out?
Yeah, no, thank you once again. If you want to check out more of the podcasts, we're all over the podcast realm. Please do check out Ciaran as well, his agency, and I'm sure the content he's been posting is going to be incredibly educational. And you also have a podcast as well, right, Ciaran? Or you've been on other podcasts?
Been on another podcast, yeah. And I'm toying with the idea of starting an e-commerce podcast as well.
I think you'll start one.
Yeah, do you reckon?
You should.
I think you will. I think you're edging for it.
Yeah. Being on the other end, I'm like, yeah. I think I'd like to start an ecom one. And it'd be very good for the agency as well, right? And also a very easy way to learn a lot of stuff. Like,
absolutely.
get some of the that's what people like Chris Williamson have said they love the most about the pod is they just sit with these like top experts and just it's like a 2-hour seminar, one-to-one. And I'm like, it's a good point. It's like, yeah, it's a very good point. But yeah, anyway, I'm sure we could chat all day. Let's wrap this up.
I know, yeah. It's been a pleasure. We wish we could extend it. We should maybe do this again in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in once again to the Grappling Growth Podcast, episode 14, and we'll see you in the next one.